If someone asked you how old you were, what would you have told them?
I would have said 28, okay. 29. Right?
After you got involved with Scientology and you learned the truth, how old would you have told someone you were if you...
76 trillion years.
Okay.
Now, I should point out that that's 76 trillion Earth years. But there's different kinds of time. There's linear time, there's chronological time, there's three-dimensional time. On some of my auditing folders, they go back to quadrillions and quintillions of years, because there's a formula to convert that to Earth years. I just wanted to let you know so that there wouldn't be any problem with that.
Okay. Just as a way of our getting started, can you tell me some of the things that you've discovered about your history, both in this life and in your past lives, that came up in the course of your learning about yourself through Scientology?
Well, the first thing I discovered is that I was not a body, that I was a spiritual being, or a thetan, operating a body. And once I had solid reality on that, I found out more about who I am, what I am, where I've been all this time, why I'm here. Much of the data that I know is in this library. There's a tape called The Roll of Earth, which talks about this planet as a prison planet, and that we are here because it's a dumping ground. We're the undesirables, and this is a place where no one else of any knowingness really wants to be, because it's really a place for undesirables, for nonconformists, for the artistic, for criminals, for deviants, you know, different things like that.
How was it that you came to learn about these things? What was the mechanism through which it happened?
Well, through auditing, through training, through data, listening to tapes, reading books, proving a lot of it out on the meter, having it proved out on the meter, having verified some things that I thought could really be. I mean, I never knew why I didn't like certain things in the physical universe. Certain images annoyed me. And
like what, for example?
Well, first, I'll give you the earliest example. When I was 6 months old, I refused to drink milk. And of course, in those days, the milk was in glass bottles. They weren't in plastic bottles. And when I was 6 months old, I would take the bottle and smash it against the wall every time my mother would give me a bottle of milk. But yet I would drink apple juice, orange juice. I love orange juice to this day. But milk, smashed against the wall. And my mother eventually gave up. She went into apathy over it. She just didn't give me milk anymore because she didn't want to clean up the glass. But I often wondered how a 6-month-old child who couldn't even speak yet would know to that extent why milk was so bad. And I found out in Scientology that I had been poisoned by a wife who gave me milk to drink, and it was poisoned milk. And that incident carried forward into this lifetime, and naturally I didn't want any part of it.
When were you poisoned?
I was poisoned, actually, you have to understand a little bit about time. And in order to answer the question,
tell us about time.
Chronologically, it was in time my last life, but it was actually 8 lifetimes ago. Because when you die and you drop your body, you do a shift in space to the between lives area, and you go through a series of very suppressive implants, which I can describe to you in great detail if you want me to. But I want to get to the point of what I'm saying. You know, then I can go back to this. It would be non sequitur if I did it the other way. Anyway, when you come back to the physical universe, you don't only do a shift in space, but you do a shift in time. And there is no guarantee that if you dropped your body in 1988, you would come back in 1989. You could just as easily come back in the year 1200. or the year 3000. Actually, there is a chronological time stream or range where the Between Lives area is set up where for 3,048 years in either direction, you could actually come back earlier or later. Or you could come back in simultaneous time where you could physically be operating two bodies at once without knowing it. Let's say you died in 1988. You could come back to life in 1962. And you could, for the period from 62 to 88, you're physically operating two bodies as a thetan, but in your own time track, one is really before the other in sequence. But in the chronological time track, which has nothing to do with real time, you're physically operating two bodies. For example, when Alexander Graham Bell invented the telephone, simultaneously someone else invented it in Europe. And when Bessemer invented the steel process, a guy named, I forget the name, but there was someone else who invented steel at the same time. I have it, it's in one of my books.
Book by whom?
By L. Ron Hubbard. And what actually was, these were the same person.
They were the same person?
But operating two different bodies.
What book is it of Hubbard's that discusses this?
It's actually a tape. It's a tape called The History of Man, which I have. I know exactly where to find it on the cassettes. It's the third tape in the series called The History of Man. I know my library.
Okay,
wasn't I saying something before we did this? Oh yeah. So you could actually conceivably come back in a different time zone. So when I say it was my last lifetime when I got poisoned with the milk, chronologically it would have been because it happened in the 40s after World War II. I had been in the concentration camp. My name was Mordecai Kusvitz, and I lost 4 children. I lost my wife, and then I got married. I went after the war. I was the only one in the family that survived. I had a lumber mill in that lifetime in Poland, in Katowice, Poland. And I survived the war, and I went to Tahiti. And I met a girl there named Gabrielle Johannes on the island of Moorea. And she was much younger than me. I was like 53 at the time, and she was like in her early 30s. And she was unfaithful, and she poisoned me with milk. Now, you know, it's a funny thing. 3 years ago, part of my training in Scientology was to go back to that island and find this lady, who is now an old lady.
You found her?
And I found her.
You found, what's her name?
I found Gabrielle Johannes. She was living in Papeete. And I found her, and I confronted her with this, and I said, you're not going to believe this, but were you ever married to a Mordecai Kusvitz? And she was like taken aback, you know. And I finally, after explaining what had happened, and I had been in Scientology, and this is what had been transpiring, she hugged me, I forgave her, and everything was fine. And now, I did a partial release on the lock of milk. Lock means, well, you know what that means.
Well, tell us.
Okay, well, when you have a lock, it's a chain of incidents. It's not like an engram because you're not feeling pain and unconsciousness, but just the very thought of milk turning me off. Like if I couldn't watch a television commercial for milk because I would get physically sick. I would experience somatics. But now I can watch that commercial. I still won't drink the stuff, but I actually de-intensified the effect of the milk by actually confronting the incident.
Exactly how did you do that in that particular case?
In that particular case, by actually going back and confronting the death, confronting the place where it happened, and then confronting the murderer, the lady who did it, and forgiving her, and telling her, I'm still okay, and you're okay, and we're friends. It de-intensified the anxiety, shall we, I can use your language once in a while too, of the incident, and it reduced the charge. It reduced the charge of the incident. And, you know, it was a great thing to do. It was part of my handling in Whole Track was to go back and actually locate this incident, locate the person, de-intensify the charge on the incident, and that was a major breakthrough I had in knowing with total causation that I really lived before.
But there weren't a lot of things that had happened on the whole track you couldn't go back and actually confront in this
Of course
body.
not, but that you do it on a gradient scale.
Okay.
You do it on a gradient scale with current lifetime so that you could then not have to Q&A with the reality of it.
Mm-hmm.
You follow what I mean?
Oh, yeah. Now, but how would you de-intensify on things that had happened in past lives where you couldn't do it in this body?
You exteriorize.
What do you mean by that?
Look at this lawyer I got. You have to leave your body. You have to be outside of the body so that you can travel through matter, energy, space, and time, location, form, and event without the constraints, shall I say, of the physical body. Let me explain something to you about the physical body. You think you see through your eyes. You know something? Did you ever have a dream?
Yes.
Were your eyes open?
No.
Did you have pictures?
Yes.
What is that?
It's a dream.
It's a dream, but you're seeing things. You have visios. You have actual mental image pictures that you experience in your dreams. You don't need your eyes to see. If you could picture for a minute what it would be like I know, have reality, and when I'm outside of the body, I see 360 degrees around. I don't have to look with blinders. These two eyes are blinders. I don't have to look at you through two messed eyes. Messed is an abbreviation for matter, energy, space, and time, which we use in Scientology. You don't need these ears to hear. You just know that you can hear, and you hear.
How did you learn to go exterior?
Well, there's various processes that are.
Tell us about some of them.
Well, the easiest one is be 3 feet in back of your head, and know with stability that you're there. You also can hold all 8 corners of the room and don't think. That's another process. If you only see 4 corners, that means you're looking at them. But if you can hold them, physically hold them by putting out a beam, you see, and not just looking at them, but putting out a tractor beam or a pressor beam. You know, there's different kinds of flows. These are different flows that you can put out. And, for example, for one situation which is very easy to do, go down to any cemetery and put out a flow to someone trapped in their dead body, and you can actually get them on their way to the between lives area. Some people are so bad on confronting that they think that they are still their dead body. You go to a morgue. You can go into a morgue and look at all of these slabs of people lying in these you know, in the morgue, and all you have to do is get into communication with one of them, and they'll think God's talking, or they'll think all kinds of weird things, you know.
Have you ever done that?
Yeah, I have.
When did you do it?
Oh, I did that back in '83. I went with Bonnie Mott. We went to a morgue, you know, and we actually went there under false pretenses to identify someone, because it's hard to get into a morgue telling them that you want to spring people out of their bodies. But we did this as a drill, and she and I put out a beam, and she saw this beam.
Were you exterior when you did this?
Yeah.
You mean you weren't in your body?
Well, I was in my body, but I was vacillating out back and forth. I put the beam out, and then I had to get exterior to locate the beam so that it would get to the right place, because I had problems doing this while in the body.
How did you go exterior on that occasion? Do you remember? What mechanism did you use?
Well, I just located myself in space and time. I didn't. It's
okay. What you were going to say? It's what?
I'm sorry. Go on.
You locate yourself in space and time. See, there's one thing I have to explain to you that may help you understand, Mark especially, because you know all this. You're in your body, I'm in my body. You have your energy flows, I have mine. And we're in this space, but you're in your space and I'm in my space. But the thing that keeps us imprisoned is time. We are both in consecutive moments of now. And that's the key to exteriorization. Time. You don't have to be in now. You can be in then, you can be in to be. You don't have to be stuck in nowness. That's why Earth and this physical universe There's a prison planet.
Can you exteriorize while you're sitting there talking to us?
Yeah, I just find it very awkward to be able to... I just would find it very awkward at this point because I'm not comfortable, you know.
Well, maybe later then.
Maybe later. But my question is, when you exteriorize, what happens to your body?
It stays where it is. I can talk through the body, but I can perceive different... In other words, the walls get very soft, like they're not there. You know, a lot of times I'll be sitting in this chair, and all of a sudden I'll get really frightened because I don't see this wall. I see the whole length of the next apartment. You know, and I've never been in that apartment. Never. But I know where everything is in there.
Do you?
Because I'll be sitting through, right here, just I'd be reading a book. Of course, you know, I don't read anything else but LRH. And all of a sudden
LRH?
L. Ron Hubbard.
Okay.
And I'll sit here, and all of a sudden I really lose it because I don't see this wall. I mean, I see a whole series of rooms, you know, and everything around me, including what's under me, and that's another thing. When you can actually see through the floor, and you're looking down 11 floors, you get really shaky because you realize you're only in up in space, and there's nothing holding you up here.
You were one time telling me that you could drive your car when you were exterior.
Oh yeah, yeah. A lot of times, well, that's an automaticity. An automaticity is very simple. You set the body on automatic. When I do a wedding, I'm very rarely around.
What do you mean you're not around?
I'm not around. The body does the wedding, says the words, goes through the vows, and sometimes I come back to the body in the middle of the ceremony and say, what the hell am I, where am I? What did I say last?
Who got paid? You were the exteriorizing person.
The body got paid. The body deserved it. It worked. I didn't do a damn thing. But sometimes I'll be like in the middle of the ceremony, and all of a sudden I'll come back to the body because I was in Australia or somewhere, and I don't even know what I'm doing. You know, like I have to catch myself and like backtrack and see where we were. You know, where the body was. You know, whenever I say where we were to Dr. Geertz, he says, "Oh, that's schizophrenia," but it isn't. It's actually the thetan and the body interacting. You know,
Dr. Geertz thinks you're schizophrenic.
That's unfortunately that's the kind of a doctor he is. But you know, in the average layman psychologist, I'm not putting you down, but I'm just saying the average WOG, you know, WOG psychologist, I should say, would come to that conclusion.
What is WOG?
WOG is a acronym for Worthy Oriental Gentleman. I should bring my dictionary here. You're going to ask me a lot of questions, and I don't want to give you tech which isn't standard.
Tech? What's tech?
Technology.
That's your belief system?
Yes.
Yeah, don't worry about talking Scientology. If you want to use the vocabulary.
Yeah, but he's confused. You see, I'm giving him all kinds of MUs, and I'm going to.
Well, tell you what.
MUs?
Misunderstood words.
Okay.
And he'll soon be doping off. You know.
Well, but sometimes just run for a while when Mark can't stand it anymore. He'll ask you for a definition. Maybe sometimes.
Yeah, ask me for a definition.
What does WOG? What does WOG mean?
A WOG is a pejorative term for like a non-Scientologist scum. You know.
Well,
it means worthy Oriental gentleman, but it also means the world operating genetically. That's the real definition.
Who is a WOG then?
Anyone who is not a Scientologist, anyone who is not aware of the fact that they're a spiritual being, operating a body rather than being a body.
So then am I a WOG?
Well, I hope you're one of the better ones.
Okay.
well, presumably all WOGs, presumably all suppressives are WOGs. Is that right?
In order to be a no. Well, once you're a suppressive, you've been declared a non-Scientologist.
By whom?
But that's an interesting point. I never really looked at that before. That's like one of these syllogisms, you know, and that you get when you study logic. Mm-hmm. We're supposed to look out for things like that in method, in word clearing, you know. When people do those generalities, that's a typical psych reaction, by the way.
Okay.
To give me a glittering generality like that.
Who would be a suppressive? Well,
if you hand me my Introduction to Scientology Ethics, I can read it to you, but I can tell it to you without it.
Tell it to us.
A suppressive is basically anyone who does not follow the 10 points of KSW. of keeping Scientology working. But more than that, not only not following it, but actually suppresses the church of Scientology, suppresses a Scientologist's right to go up the bridge. It's anyone who commits a high crime or an act of suppression which results in real negative statistics for an org or for any of the dynamics, actually.
How vital is a Scientologist's right to go up the bridge?
Well, there's two rights that have been interfered with in the physical universe. And those two rights are the right to one's sanity and the right to leave the game. Did you know that? Have you heard that before?
Not the second one, no.
Okay. The right to leave the game. If a person does not want to be here, and if a person wants to go to... I hate when that happens.
Why don't we... Okay, let's go back to the question I think we were talking about before the phone call. I was asking you to explain the importance to a Scientologist of going up the bridge.
Well, the bridge represents the levels of awareness, knowing how to know. And at the top of the grade chart, you enter a phase where you are not dependent upon the physical body for any reason whatsoever. You operate by postulates. You say, let there be light, and there is light. In other words, that's a postulate. And you don't need any of the barriers of the physical universe in which to operate.
Now, is it you, or do you mean, when you say you in that explanation, you the Thetan or you the body?
No, we're talking the Thetan.
Okay.
The body is the genetic entity.
So the you in this...
There is no body you. You are not a body.
I understand.
That's the whole point I'm trying to make.
I understand. So that it's the Thetan that gains these abilities through the processing.
Yeah, the genetic entity is no different than a genetic horse or a cat or a dog.
Are these new abilities that the Thetan acquires, or are these old abilities that the Thetan always had?
These are exactly. They're old abilities that the Thetan learns how to reacquaint himself or herself with.
You mean I have these abilities?
Absolutely.
It's
Absolutely. It's a matter of the fact that they're occluded. Your abilities are hidden. They're occluded because of all of the overts that you've committed along the line.
How did it happen that the Thetan lost the abilities?
Because the Thetan became the victim of his own trap. He built this trap called the physical universe because he wanted to create randomity. And he wanted to create, in other words, a big game where, picture yourself knowing everything there is to know and knowing how to know it, and there is an element of 2.5, which would be boredom on the tone scale. There would be an element of, well, we know all there is to know, so what else is there? So we created the element of being slightly unknowing in order to enjoy re-knowing. Do you understand what I'm saying? The purpose of setting up the physical universe the way we did was to create a game. But unfortunately, we created the game. It's like, there's a very good analogy. When they built the atomic bomb in the 40s, they didn't build the cure for the atomic bomb. They just built the bomb. And the same analogy, the way I learned it in training, is we built the body and the physical universe without the way to unbuild it or uncreate it. And that's what Scientology does. Scientology is the method of uncreating the physical universe, uncreating the mess that we're in. And it can be done in a variety of ways. One of them is uncreating time itself. Because very few people realize that there's such an illogical thing happening here. We have three-dimensional space, and we only have two-dimensional time. That is totally absurd and ludicrous, because when you think about it, why should time be moving in one direction with consecutive moments of now? Why shouldn't time be moving in any direction you cause it to move?
If a Thetan regains its lost powers, what's it capable of doing?
It's capable of knowing, being, doing, and having whatever it wants.
Does it have power over matter, energy, space, and time?
That's one of the byproducts of regaining this ability.
So it could postulate whole universes.
Exactly. You can build your own universe. The PDCs teach you, the Philadelphia Doctorate course lectures teach you how to build a universe.
What do you mean by build a universe?
How to create your own universe. Forget about this one. You could postulate a universe and build it better. For example, in the PDCs, Ron talks about God's mistakes in creating the physical universe, if he in fact created it, which we know that he didn't. He created us, allegedly. That's the eighth dynamic theory. And, of course, it's also in my Book of Life, too. God created us as theta. In the book, I say as pure thought. And we built the universe, because, after all, if God is infinitely good and truth and love, why would he create a universe whereby every time we had to eat, some plant or animal would have to die?
How important is it to you personally to regain your Thetan powers?
It's the most important thing in my life. I would do anything it takes to do it. Anything. At this point, in fact, I found out that Cult Awareness Network has some hidden Scientology data. Are you aware of that?
No.
Well, I found out. I made some calls, and now I'm trying to. Of course, I'm operating as a squirrel, you know, obviously, because I can't do it standardly. But I have to get this data no matter what it takes to get it.
What do you mean as a squirrel?
Well, a squirrel. Oh, I didn't bring my tech dictionary back down here. It's up there.
You know
the
definition.
A squirrel is a person who perverts Scientology, who alters the tech, and who tries to delve into offbeat practices which are not approved up lines by Scientology as what is standard.
Why are you a squirrel?
I'm a squirrel now because I can't go up the bridge, and I need to get the data. How can I go up the bridge now when I'm declared a potential trouble source?
What is up the bridge?
It's everything. Going up the bridge is Ron's streamlined gradient scale of awareness.
But what are the actual steps of going up the bridge? In other words, the steps you would like to be able to take.
Doing steps in being processed. You do the objectives, and then you do you go first through clear, and then you do the clear certainty rundown, and then you do the OT levels 1 through 8. Before you do clear, you do the NED, the New Era Dianetics levels. You can also, there's 2 alternates in that area. If you don't go clear on NED, then you can do the power processes. There's various methods. There is a grade chart which I can show you, which indicate the path to go up the bridge, and I can explain it to you if you like.
How far up the bridge did you go?
Through objectives.
That's all. You didn't do any of the OT.
I did it on the left side of the bridge.
On the training side.
Right, right.
Do you know who Zimu was?
Zimu, no.
Zimu.
It doesn't ring a bell.
Never heard of the Emperor Zimu?
No.
Okay.
Nope. Who is he?
It's for me to know and you to guess.
Oh, I can look it up if it's here.
Maybe it's not. Maybe it's in upper level materials.
How far up?
OT3?
Well, as I say,
what would happen to you if you were exposed to OT3 materials before you were ready?
That would be the end, basically.
What would happen?
Well, I'm told that if you see it, you could physically die. Your physical body could die.
Would you start freewheeling?
Yeah. Freewheeling or freeloading, and that's a joke in Scientology. You know what that freeloader is a person who leaves his post. No, I was told that if you see the wall of fire materials before you've been trained on the preps, then it's too unconfrontable to handle. At this point, I'm willing to take that shot.
And what happens to you? Describe what would happen if you started freewheeling, or if you saw some of this material when you weren't.
Well, you do a
prepared
bunk
for it.
to the between lives area.
Do a what?
You do a bunk to the between lives area, which means I wish you'd get the dictionary.
You need the dictionary?
No, I don't need it. I just want to tell it to you standardly.
Okay. I think you ought to have the dictionary if you need it then.
Well, I mean, I just don't want to. It's very important.
We'll get you the dictionary.
Technical dictionary, second shelf, 7th book over. Right. Left, 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 left. Right. Okay. 8th book, all right. Good. Yeah, I shifted the books the other day because I needed room for a check sheet. Okay. Doing a bunk. It's very important. That's when you leave the body and...
you don't want to go past a word you don't understand, do you?
That's right. I don't want any of us to have that problem. Mark doesn't realize the problem with that. The body collapses, the heart is still beating, the lungs are still breathing, because the genetic entity is running those, but the thetan is gone. That's what we say colloquially, over the hills and far away, and he's now passing Galaxy 18. The person shoots out of his head and he's on his way. He hit the dispersal just adjacent to a ridge. That's doing a bunk. In other words, but it's worse than that if you see material of OT3. You would be the effect of everything negative in the between lives area. In other words, the wall of fire is... what? Okay. When I was in Denmark, in Copenhagen, I did I did training on the left side of the bridge, and part of it was confronting some of those materials, even though I wasn't processed up there. You see, you can go all the way up the left side of the bridge too. Are you aware of that?
Yes.
Okay.
Which means that you can
train your way through a co-audit up to the highest levels, which would be class 12 on the left side.
Which would mean that you could audit somebody
on OT7 completion.
A higher level than you yourself.
Exactly, because an auditor is senior to a clear. Have you ever heard of that?
Yeah. But then how would it be that you could audit somebody on materials that if you saw, you would start freewheeling on?
When you're auditing those materials, you're able to confront them, because the auditing TRs, the TRs you use to audit them, get you to confront them.
Okay, can I just stop right here? I want to know a few things.
Yeah.
What do you mean by auditing?
An auditing process is where one person listens to the other person, and they go through a series of questions and drills in order to make the able more able. That's the basic definition.
The person asks you questions?
Yeah, they ask you questions which can be on a check sheet, but auditing is where you're causative. You don't really rely on the check sheet all of the time. You have to be able to produce an effect. The effect is getting to the person up to the next level. It's actually a process of getting the person through that grade.
Okay, but auditing is more than just asking questions, because you're on the cans.
The auditor is watching the reads of the person who's on the cans.
That's the E-meter?
Yeah.
And what's happening with the E-meter? Can you just explain that for Mark?
Well, the E-meter is giving you reads, floating needle and rock slams if you have that. Different things can happen, you know. What would you like to know about the meter? typically in an auditing situation, you would be, let's say you were the pre-clear. You wouldn't see the meter.
This is an e-meter?
This is an e-meter. See? Say hello. That's when you do tone 40 on an object. You know that drill, don't you?
Yeah.
Okay.
Let me have my microphone. Where do you... It's okay. Where do you get this e-meter from?
You buy it from any central organization.
Who makes it?
Bridge Publications.
I mean, Scientology sells it to you?
Sure. It's about $3,500.
This one that I'm holding?
Yeah.
It's called the
A Mark
Hubbard
Super 7.
Professional Mark Super 7?
Right.
Now, what do these things do?
Okay. I can explain it to you. This is your tone arm. Okay? This is the most important dial on the meter because it indicates whether a process is flattened or whether it has to be audited out until you get a phenomena where you go on to the next process. This meter is very, very unique because it gives you a digital read on the tone arm. You may not have even seen a Mark Super 7.
Haven't.
You've seen the 6, right?
Yeah.
Okay. This gives you a digital readout for the tone arm, which that does not do. Follow? Also, your needle is of a much better quality. The needle itself is calibrated better. You have, they even have a remote tone arm now, which I would love to get, but unfortunately they won't sell me one, you know. But they have a remote tone arm, which you can work from a different direction. The idea, of course, well, on the upper level processes, when you're exterior, to be able to use the remote tone arm would be a
You mean
great
when you're
advantage.
exteriorizing, when you're out of your body?
Yeah. You do solo auditing. When you do solo auditing, you don't hold the cans. You're holding them upside down, Mark. You don't hold the cans like this. You hold them like this, with one hand, like this.
Yeah.
And you get your reads, and you write the reads down because you're auditing yourself.
Can you audit yourself for us right now?
Yeah, sure. What would you like to? What would you like to know?
Why don't you tell us about something?
I'd have to. He won't be able to see the meter when I'm doing this, though. You can.
Okay, I'll attest to what's on the meter.
Okay. Well, let me get it to the point where I see. When you audit yourself, you're setting it a lot differently from when you audit others.
All right.
Because, for example, here, shall I show you the? You know, you're skipping around. Shouldn't I show you how the meter works as far as you auditing me, for example?
Why don't you audit Mark?
Audit
that way the meter could be seen.
Could be seen.
Okay. I will hold the cans.
Like this.
Let me just get everything set up here. Hold on a second. Hold them. No, not like that. Each can, one can in one hand. Don't squeeze them too hard. Just a gentle squeeze. Hold on. Most men audit, by the way, at 2, and Mark's auditing we're setting him around 2.4.
What does that mean?
Well, women audit at 3. You know that, don't you?
No.
Oh.
But I've never had any left-sided.
That mean I was
training.
a woman in a past life?
Oh, yeah. I think a lot of us have been.
Okay.
Okay. What were you just thinking about?
What?
What were you just thinking about?
Nothing.
You were holding a thought there, maybe. All right. Hold on. Okay, just stay there, right there. Okay.
Now, be careful. Don't ask him anything too embarrassing.
Oh, I'll ask you an easy question. Have you ever lived before?
I don't know.
He's telling the truth. It fell. The meter fell. In other words, I can show you. It went all the way to the right when he asked the question. Do you consider yourself to be a competent attorney?
Absolutely.
Good. Very well done. Is the sky orange?
No.
See where it went?
Except there's something I just noticed.
Yeah.
I squeezed the can slightly and it jumped.
Well, you're not supposed to do that.
But how do I know to keep the exact same pressure on?
When you
every
said, is
second?
the sky orange, and you said no, it showed a lie reaction, because at the end of the day, the sky is orange. And it showed that you see, it contacts you as a being, not as a, it contacts not the analytical mind.
Contacts the...
I mean, it doesn't contact the, it contacts you as a being.
In other words,
And
your fate.
the Thetan.
In other words, you're saying this has no scientific...
Oh, sure it does. You just lied without your knowledge, and it picked it up.
So if I lie without, if I do not purposefully lie,
You know what I'm
it
saying?
tells me that I lied anyway, right?
Yeah. Yeah, exactly.
So if my subconscious knows that I lied,
It'll indicate it just like it did just now.
but you said it's not the subconscious.
Well, it's the Thetan. It's
The Thetan.
you as a being
Okay.
always knows what's real.
All right. Ask me something else along those lines.
Well, give me let's use
why
one of
don't
my
we
check
Why don't we
sheets.
show the meter to the camera? Hold it up towards
Okay,
the
yeah.
camera,
Right. And
Well,
then just ask a question so that...
so
Okay,
that the
give me
camera can see.
Give me one of those check sheets.
just ask a question. You know, and then we can do the check sheet in a minute, but just ask any question while the meter's to the camera.
Okay, well, just a second. Are you holding the cans the same way?
Yes.
No, all right. Hold on just a second. Okay. All right. What was that thought? What did you just think of?
God, I wish I could lose some weight.
You see what happened? As he thought of something, without me doing anything, the meter indicated
A thought?
a fall. Yeah. Okay. Let's.
But I'm always thinking.
All right. Let me. Now, try not to think of a pink elephant. You trying real hard not to think of a pink elephant?
Not at all.
See the reaction? Falling needle.
Now try manipulating the cans with your hands for a moment, Mark.
Wait a minute. Now that's not right. Why would you want him to do that?
Because I just want to see the needle move in response to physical manipulations of his hands. That's all. Okay.
In other words, you're trying to discredit this meter.
No,
No.
I'm not trying to discredit anything. I just wanted to see it happen.
You believe the meter works?
Oh yes. So then why would you want to tell him away any type of process that could throw the meter off?
Well, can I ask you a question?
Yeah.
Has it ever been explained to you in Scientology through your studies exactly how this works scientifically?
It's an electrogalvanometric response, which has nothing to do with moisture on your skin like a lie detector. It contacts the Thetan, the beingness, through the vessel that you're operating, which is the physical body.
But how scientifically does it? How mechanically does it do it? Well, let me ask you this. Why doesn't a lie detector machine...
Because that measures physiological responses like sweat. And the reason why a lie detector doesn't work is because when you finish telling a lie, you're still sweating. You don't start unsweating. Whereby, when you lie on this, the needle will have its reaction, and that's it. It contacts not you, but not you as a body, but you as a Thetan. Not the conscious level you.
So the way you find things out in Scientology is you get hooked up to this, you hold these two cans,
I hold the cans,
and somebody asks you questions.
or I would audit myself. I can do solo auditing. I mean,
And that's how you find out about your past lives?
oh yeah, yeah. You get reads.
So from these cans and this machine, you found out about the experience you had with
Everything.
milk? Being
Everything.
poisoned by milk?
What are some of the other...
But I also have the mental image pictures, and I can contact those images.
What are some of the other events from your various past lives that stand out as most significant?
Well, how far back do you want to go?
Go back as far as you can.
Just give us your hit parade of the most significant...
Okay,
or
the most
dramatic-
significant event that I wrote about. In fact, I guess that would be the most significant event.
You're talking about a book you wrote?
I'm talking about a book that I wrote. The binder is falling out. You're not being careful with this, Mark. I told you not to be sloppy. Okay.
What's the name of the book?
The Holy Book of Life.
tell us what you discovered. And in fact, if you can remember, it would be very helpful if you could explain how it was that
I learned the number. At that time, I didn't know it was my son. I hadn't seen this family member ever. But I knew where he was, and I knew how to reach him because I found out some of the things he was doing. And I confronted him with the fact that I was his father, and the image that I had, the mental image pictures, the first mental image pictures of this, was of this son of mine cursing me, beating me up, urinating on me, and exposing me to all kinds of degradation. And we went to the beginning of the incident, and we went back and forth, and finally I found out, the whole image came through very clearly, that I was Jesus Christ's real father. That I was a neighbor of his mother 4 houses down. And his mother was only 13 at the time. I was 16. And she used to go out in the morning at sunrise to bathe. And, of course, there was no indoor plumbing 2,000 years ago. And, of course, I had always found this girl very attractive and sensual. And, you know, one of the disadvantages of remembering your past lives is that when you find somebody in the past that means so much more to you than you have found in this lifetime seems very unreal. Have you ever noticed that?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Well, the point is, Mary, his mother, was very, very sexy and sensual. And every morning I used to watch her bathe, hiding behind the bushes. And I would get very excited, and I would masturbate, you know. And this went on for like months, 7 months or so. And, of course, eventually she caught me, you know, doing this, and there was a big flap over that. But in the meantime, I made her pregnant artificially because the sperm, the semen, went through the bushes, through the water, about 4 feet away, and penetrated her. And when she found out she was pregnant, they had a doctor who examined her and to see whether she had been whether she had sexual intercourse, because that would have been grounds for a stoning, you know. And they found out that she was intact. Her hymen was still there. And of course, what happened? One thing led to another, and the family decided to make a big PR campaign out of this and blame it on God. They had this rabbi, Zacharias, who came up with the idea. But anyway, that is how Jesus was really born. But what happened was, I never really had a chance to meet him because when I confronted Mary with it before she had the baby, she denied the whole thing, and she was like very adamant about it and never wanted to see me again. But 30 years later, when he was preaching outside of the outskirts of Jerusalem, where I had moved to, I left that city, and I was in business there. I went to see him to tell him who I really was. We even looked alike. We physically, the mock-ups, the bodies looked alike.
Of Jesus?
Yeah, I looked like him. I'm just an older version of him. But he was so outraged. I think, in fact, I know he believed all the garbage, that he was who he thought he was, you know, the Son of God and all this other stuff. He was that deluded that I couldn't even go into a good ARC with him.
What's an ARC?
Affinity, reality, and communication, when you find a level of agreement. And consequently, he became really en theta about everything, and he started to hit on me, you know, and he beat the hell out of me, really.
How many auditing sessions did it take before all of this emerged?
Oh, quite a few. I would say close to probably between 15 and 18.
Were they consecutive, or did this happen over a long period of time?
It happened over a 2-month period. It wasn't necessarily consecutive. We handled other things. And then we went back to this, because there was always charge on this incident.
But you keep going back to this with the auditor?
Oh, yeah. The auditor brought me back to the incident because it was so heavily charged on the meter. He was getting all kinds of weird reads, and it had to be flattened. And a lot of problems. For example, we started in this lifetime. We started when I was 4 years old. Every time I used to see a church, I used to feel angry. I used to feel this intense anger, you know. And even after that, we're tracking backwards now. Originally, first thing I did wrong, I spit at a church, you know. And then there was such anger prior to that, and we tracked it back, and we found out, interestingly enough, not only was I his father, but that was my last lifetime. Last lifetime. As I told you before, the chronological time has nothing to do with real time. The time that I was in a concentration camp in Auschwitz, and I got out of there and I married this Gabrielle Johannes and got poisoned with the milk, chronologically was my last time, but that happened 8 lifetimes ago. My last lifetime in real time, in my real time track, which has nothing to do with your time track or your time track or the time track of anyone else, was this very, very pressing incident.
Which was?
Which was that my being Jesus Christ's real father.
Is that why you had such a big charge on it?
Oh yeah, because it was current. It was thoroughly into re-stimulation every time I would see a church or a crucifix or a picture of him, or an image of him, or an image of the scene or the condition or the incident. And I was like violently flung into stimulation like wherever I would go, because there'd be a church on almost every corner. You know, and this was really affecting my sanity. The fact that I had this intense charge on something I knew nothing about.
How aware of the re-stimulation were you before you came across his imagery?
Quite aware of the fact that I would get like goosebumps and tremble and feel this hot and cold running flashes, you know, every time I would see a church. I could never confront going into one. I would go on these tours of these ancient churches, and I could never walk into one. And even with my parents, who were conservative Jews, and you know, and like they said it shouldn't mean anything to you because you're not a Christian. You know, why should it matter? Why don't you want to go into these churches? And I just said I can't go in there. I felt like I was not able to breathe the minute I even came close to a door. Now I've walked into Arabic mosques, and I had no charge whatsoever. Walked into loads of temples. But the minute I got near a church, I got these terrible somatics all through my life. And in fact, you asked me before if about past lives. Yes, it comes back to me that I felt there was something there. I felt that there is some real serious overt, well, I'm using their words now, but okay. I mean, there was some real serious problem. And of course, the overt was fathering a person like that, because he was basically a terrorist. He was promoting these illusions of fear and death through the Bible. I mean, not through the Bible, of course, because the Bible was written after him. But the fact is, in his lifetime, he was like saying that the only way to reach God is through him, and all of this stuff, and if you don't do it his way, you go to hell. There is no such place as hell. Hell is the between lives area, and the mental image pictures within it.
Did you tell people in the Church of Scientology about these realizations?
Of course.
How did they react to them?
You mean you're talking about after they happened?
Yes.
I became an instant star. They said I was the one who was going to destroy the Christian church, and all of they were looking for me. In fact, I had to go to Flag for a special briefing because they found their guy. I mean, there's been other cases like that when they found Einstein, you know, and they found some other major people. And because very few people are important, and even that role would have unto itself been unimportant, but the fact is that the person connected with it was so important, and they found the real father of Jesus Christ, and they could prove it on the meter and show the world what stupid bullshit. Pardon, oh, I'm on videotape, but
it's all right. Okay. When did you go to Flag?
Oh, I went to Flag numerous times.
But for this
in connection with this incident?
Right.
In '85.
What is Flag?
Flag is the central organization of of the upper levels of Scientology, where you, in other words, certain things can't be done other than in flag. So I had to do my FPRD, you know, my false purpose rundown. Certain things had to be done in connection with this incident.
Okay. Once it had been revealed who you really were or who you had been,
Yes.
what were the long-range plans? How were you how were you going to be used?
Well, used sounds like I was being used.
Well, how was this fact going to be exploited? Put it that way.
At some point in time, when I got up to the level of awareness that they felt I needed to be at in order to confront this heavy charged area of the bank, I would come forth and show the world exactly what had happened in that particular incident. And it would be, at some point, in other words, plans were made by INT management to invalidate and strip, actually the word is to strip the false data from the Christian churches worldwide, planet-wide.
When would you be ready to have this happen?
As soon as I in other words, as soon as I accumulated $500,000 to go up to the top of the bridge, do my L's by a flag trained, by a class 12, and go on the ship, do Truth Revealed OT8 and OT9, which is now available. Did you know OT9?
OT9's out?
OT9, you know. Well, I got a letter the other day saying that they're about to release OT9. You know, I don't think it's really out yet. But when I would get to that point, then I would be able to operate without. I would be operating as a full OT. The OT8 is the first full OT level. Up to OT7 are the pre-OT levels. Are you aware of that?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. In order to handle anything of this magnitude, in other words, there is nothing of comparable magnitude out there that could be handled by a person stuck in a messed body. The way that I was told how this would be handled by Don Schwartz, I think his name is Don, his last name is Schwartz, the fellow from the Flag World Tour who talked to me about it. He's a tall guy, about 6'5", you know. His last name is Schwartz, and I know what he looks like. I have a Vizio of him now. But he said to me that this has to be handled when you are fully rehabilitated as a Thetan, because this is heavy-duty stuff. And you can't take on half the world, which is basically the Christian world, without taking on your bank first. Follow?
Yes.
But when you are at that point, look what a boom this would be for Scientology, because after all, when half the world realizes that their efforts have been misdirected towards faith in false data in Jesus Christ, where else is what he said to me, where else have they got to go but to come to us? Do you realize what an FSM you're going to be?
What's FSM?
Field staff member disseminating. What an FSM you'll be taking on half the planet. That was my mission.
So is it fair to say you would have made a major contribution to helping Ron clear the planet?
I would have cleared half the planet. Half the planet is Christian. Once I stripped away the false data of Jesus Christ on this beautiful machine, and it's provable because the data is there, then I was going to be the one to clear half the planet.
But in order to do that, you first needed to get $500,000 together.
I had to be trained not by the org, processed. I had to be processed not by the org where there are class 4s. You know, an org is a class 4 org, a local org. I had to be processed by class 12s at Flag. I was CS'd. That means the case supervisor found that there is no other way to get me fully hatted on my purpose in life than to get me trained by the best case-cracking 12s they have at Flag.
Who was the CS who found that?
Captain Mark Yeager at Flag. Captain Mark Yeager is the one who well, there was a big briefing at Flag when I went there, and all the big execs were there.
Was this a big brief just for you?
Yeah, just for me.
How many people were at this briefing?
4 or 5. The
Do you remember
biggest.
Who they were?
Miss Miscavige. There's a fellow by the name of Miscavige.
David Miscavige?
David Miscavige.
Who else?
And Captain Mark Yeager and why? And Schwartz, this fellow Schwartz. And hold on, there's and there was a guy from OSA there.
Did all of these people know how you were accumulating the money?
Oh yeah, yeah. They obviously. I mean, the point is, they said to me, you've got to keep these stats going. You've got to keep these up stats going.
The up stats meant the money you were accumulating.
Doing this, never. When you have an up stat, you repeat the condition. You don't go into a lower condition by violating the conditions chart. Right there, there's a conditions chart. You got to read that. You know it.
I know it.
But when you're in power, when you've gone from screaming affluence to power, and the flows are coming in, and the money's coming in, and the thing is building, don't violate the power formula, because as soon as you do that, you're finished. Power change isn't even valid at that point. You are in power.
But in this meeting, this briefing that was held for you at Flag,
right,
at which David Miscavige was present,
right,
there was discussion of the way in which you were accumulating money. Is that
absolutely
correct?
They said to me, continue these cases. You continue working these cases. And in fact, don't, in other words, in fact, I forget whether it was Miscavige or the guy from OSA. The guy from OSA was the one who said, just as Flag auditing has to be flubless, your handling of this hat has to be flubless. There can be no more Q&A with you know, this was after I got divorced. There could be no more Q&A like with the ex-wife. There could be no Q&A with Mest. You have a hat, you wear it. You're doing this not only for Ron and for us, but to clear. You're going to be the one to clear half the planet. It's you, because not only have you got the ability to actually provide the wherewithal to fund the project as an FP, financial planner, but you are in other words, I was wearing all the hats. I was actually the reason why the tech was being done, so that when the funds were in, it would be me doing. In other words, instead of having 10 or 20 different people wearing different hats, I'm wearing a lot of hats, because it's going to be me who's going to come forward and prove to the world that I was the father of Jesus Christ. You realize what a big responsibility that is? You realize what an important Thetan I am? Because here, who else could do it? He only had one father, one biological father. He didn't have 20 fathers. In fact, they said that to me. They said, if he had 20 fathers, we could have a choice of who we can use, but you're the guy. You know?
Mm-hmm.
So when all of this thing blew up on 31 July, I decided I still have to do this. I have to do this anyway. Why do you think I put all of this together so quickly? Because the most important thing in my life is to clear the planet. And you can't clear the planet unless you strip away the false data about Christianity. Then after people realize that Jesus Christ was my son, where are they going to go but to Scientology? When they know from the Holy Book of Life that past lives are valid, that all of the processes I talk about in here, they can trace back to Scientology. Scientology is going to pick it up. They're going to pick it up, and they're going to clear the planet. And even if I'm PTS, or even if I'm an SP, Ron is going to know I'm the one who did it. Do you see how important my mission is even now?
Certainly. Yeah.
No matter what happens with all this crap with the case and with the government and with Kemp, I'm going to clear the planet anyway. You see?
Uh-huh.
I'm still wearing my hat.
That's right.
I mean, SP or SP, I'm still clearing the planet.
While you were at Flag on this time when you went there for the this meeting, was there only one meeting or was there more than one meeting?
Well, we had the major meeting.
It was just one major meeting.
Yeah, that was all that was necessary.
How long did you spend at Flag at that time?
Well, I stayed there for, I think it was 3 days, 2 nights.
And what'd you do during those 3 days and 2 nights?
Well, you know how life is at Flag. You get into Flag and there are 3 people trying to get you to spend money, you know. You got redges all over the place. You can't even walk down the hall without hitting into a reg and going into a briefing, and I had CCHR regging, and I had, well, that was at the Psychbuster conference. All right, back in the first, I did the Psychbuster conference later on. You know, I was in that thing. I was one of the few invited.
Let's stay on this.
Okay, but you know, there were people who wanted. At that time, they were talking about the ship project. There was no ship then.
What year was this?
85.
Okay.
Oh, and at that meeting, they decided they're going to have to change a lot of facts around because they have to protect themselves. I mean, this was like this whole thing about. I was like a DSA. I was like. You know, they had just switched over, you know, recently from the GO. Remember when the GO?
Yes.
Well, when was the GO disbanded again? It was it 83 or 84?
Somewhere in that period.
Yeah, and they had just started with formulating the OSA, the Office of Special Affairs. In fact, the only reason why they chose Fred Hare to be the mission holder of Fort Lauderdale, because Fred Hare used to run the GO, the Guardian's office. And Fred Hare, after they had trouble with Peter Letteries, they didn't want my stats to go down. When they, you know, I showed you some of the stuff on Peter that they...
Tell you what, let's stay with, just, let me ask you...
I mean, we're talking about big, exciting things.
Yeah, I understand it, but,
you know.
But let me just ask you one more question about this meeting, and then let's continue on talking generally about Scientology.
Right.
Obviously, I want to know what you're talking about, but not at this particular moment. What else happened that weekend? Tell me, just list the things for me that you remember about that.
Well, I had some sessions at Flag. Okay. You know, I had some auditing done, some sec checking. You know, naturally. There was another intensive, which I forget what it was called, but it was in preparation for this meeting. Like I had to earn my right to be there, really, you know. Okay. And there was a lot of that, and there was, and of course I love Flag. You know, I hung around the bookstore, and of course I was, at that time we decided the big game. The big game was to do this. I mean, this was done after that.
That's when that was decided?
Yeah, yeah. They decided that I needed to flow some funds back into the, as fair exchange. In other words, what I was doing at that point, the big game, that was the time the big game was decided upon, and I found that the big game was to be the first person. You see, I had to have a lot of other hats being worn at the time. So the big game was to be the first person on planet Earth to have all of LRH's data. Because how would it be if the person who's going to clear half the planet is missing data? Would that make any sense?
Was it after this that you first began this large transferring of funds to Scientology?
Well, yeah. Well, no, not. I was transferring funds all along for auditing, but not in the way we did it afterwards. But we had to do it before in cash. But now we did it by check because I was able to buy products. You see?
Okay.
So once we got this going, they had me go to Europe, to Copenhagen. I did some co-auditing there too, as I told you about the Wall of Fire. And when I was in Copenhagen, I got a lot of missing tapes that they didn't even have at Flag. My job was to comb every warehouse, to find every bit of data, and I helped the org in a way which you wouldn't even believe how I helped the org. You know what my capability is as an organizer.
Mm-hmm.
Every warehouse and stockroom of every major org was in shambles because of that. You know, when they had the problem with the GO and there was a lot of problems on the lines back in the early 80s, everything got screwed up. I'm the one who put every tape, every book in an organizational form. I organized Bridge, I organized Flag, and I organized NEP. Did you know that?
No.
I organized their entire stockroom, warehouse.
Where were these places physically?
Well, the Flag warehouse is a block north of the Fort Harrison Hotel and 2 blocks
in Clearwater.
Clearwater. Bridge has a big warehouse in L.A., which is near the railroad track somewhere. I know how to get there. Of course, in NEP, they have a warehouse in Copenhagen, which is maybe about 3 miles from the New Era Publications main org, which is a competitive org of Bridge. You see, because of the LRH birthday game, which was started in '83, every org had to be competitive with every other org except for Flag, because there was only one Flag, you know. But like Bridge and NEP are competitors. So like we were playing a big game, who would have the most tapes to sell me, see? Mm-hmm. And I would be, like, the first one who called me would have to be the one I'd buy them from, because it was like they've got to get their acting gear and find out what they have. So what I did is I went to Bridge, and then I went to NEP, and I basically cleaned every available tape out that I didn't have. And there are tapes that I still don't have. Then I entered into another big cycle in '86 where they were supposed to make, Gold was going to get involved. They were supposed to make every tape that I didn't have. And I gave them Golden Era Productions.
What are they?
They're the sound org. They're the ones who produce all the cassettes, and they make the tapes. They duplicate the tapes. So what happened was, because Bridge and NEP got involved, Gold wanted to get involved. So from when I got money from the cases, I got like about $85,000 in a short period of time. Fred, was it Fred or was it Peter? No, it was still Peter. No, it was Fred. That's right, it was Fred. He had just taken over. He said, we're going to give Gold a chance to play the birthday game. And what I did is I gave them all the money, and I said, just send me every tape that I don't have. And they said, you already have every tape that we have. Fine, let's make them. So like a big project was going to be started where they would actually physically put on reels tapes that were in archives, which I never even got to see. But the problem is they didn't do them. They didn't make the tapes. So that I became really ARC broken at that point in my ethics. I was always being routed to ethics because, I mean, here I felt they were violating the game when I had done everything I was supposed to do. And it was like, it shouldn't have mattered because my bigger game was to clear half the planet. So I had like an ethics hang-up, which really got me stuck in '86, '87, and '88. That's basically what stuck me on the time track. And, I still say that they should have, because I wanted to be the first one, I was just playing the game the way we decided at Flag when I had the big meeting.
The last time we talked, you told me about what you learned about the OT8 level. You want to tell me that again?
As far as being able to go there?
Well, how OT8 is done, where it's done, and what the effects
Okay, the OT8 is truth revealed. It's the first level which a Thetan can operate on as an OT, as a full OT. It is given on the ship, which is called the Free Winds. And
it's a real ship? You mean a boat?
It's a real ship. It's a real boat, which is the place that Presley's daughter went on her honeymoon to do her levels. You know, you read it in People magazine. Remember? You told me?
Okay.
All right. So, anyway, I was invited on the Free Winds to do some... in fact, had I not had the altercation with the government, I was scheduled to go to the Free Winds on October the 12th to do my Route to Infinity, Anatomy of Cause, and the Power of Simplicity courses.
What would those have cost?
Those 3 courses would have been about 10 grand. And it would have taken about a month. I would have spent a month on the Free Winds, And I was so, when I was coming back from Spain after I had visited the place where I was hung.
Hung?
I told you about that.
Oh, you mean when you were hanged in the past?
When I was hung in the 16th century in Malaga, Spain, where I didn't want to wear a tie. I found out in my auditing that I didn't want to wear a tie because I was hung, and I wanted to get that, reduce and eliminate the charge on that incident altogether. And I went to the courtyard in Malaga, Spain, where they hung me, and I mocked up the whole Visio of the hanging. I actually exteriorized and saw myself being hung, and I was back in the past, back there. I was the executioner. I was the victim. I was, you know how to do a mock-up
Sure.
processing. You know, you have to be everyone that you see in the picture. You have to be every person, even the people throwing tomatoes at you, and be them, so that there isn't one element of reactive charge that could influence you after you fully EP the incident. You know, that means the end phenomena, when you bring the incident to a close. And I was, you know, I did this in Spain. I also did another thing in Greece prior to that, in Corfu. There was an incident. What?
What was that about?
There was another incident where I was raped once when I was a girl in the town of Paleokastrica, and I had to go through that incident as well. I did that the first week, and then the second week I went to Malaga, Spain, and all the charge. See, the purpose of that was that even though the incident with Jesus Christ was my last lifetime, there is also a parallel track that I had to handle, which was I was to handle every lifetime that occurred in chronological time since the year minus 22 BC, when I was born as Malchut, you know, and current physical time. So part of my handling was to go through and physically destimulate every lifetime that occurred on the chronological time track between that life and this one, which is why I had to complete those pretty severe incidents in Europe, you know. But here I was coming back on the plane, and I was thinking of how wonderful it's going to be. I'm going to finally get to the free winds, and you know, and then all of a sudden I was arrested.
Let me ask you this: what do they do on the free winds?
The free winds is the only place that delivers OT8. It isn't delivered at Flag.
Okay, now what's the... You told me about what the impact of completing OT8 is. Why don't you repeat it?
Okay. When you are an OT8 completion, you are not dependent upon the physical body to handle matter, energy, space, time, location, form, and event. If you want to spend the next billion years in a bubble of light, contemplating aesthetic beauty, you know, you've heard about the 9th and 10th dynamics. Okay, that's in a PDC tape. You could do that, but of course that's not really part of my game. My game was, and is, to clear this planet. And I need the power to have the ability to clear the planet. And
You mean to make everybody realize the truth? Is that what?
no, clearing is to have half the planet go exterior. The Christians who were stuck in these visios of the between lives area, and of course, you know, you have to understand a little bit about the time track of Christ.
Hold on a second. I'm going to take you back. Finish telling me about the OT8s.
Okay. Because I got to tell you about the time track of Christ too. You know, it gets into my case.
Finish the OT8s first.
Okay. On the ship, basically what happens is this. You're doing the OT8 levels, and your body, you're not in your body for a long period of time. I'm not talking about for an hour or two or even an intensive. You're out of the body for a long period of time. The body is actually hooked up to a life support system and is given fluids, and is like you would put a person in a coma on a life support system. And you are so individuated from the body, I mean, it doesn't matter that the body is laying there. You are the Thetan doing your OT8 level, not even anywhere remotely near the body. You don't even need that body to do that level. And you have no physical dependency upon the body when you do Truth Revealed. When you do Truth Revealed, you first go down to the course room, you get your OT8 pack, and that whole process takes maybe 3 hours, and then you do the level. And by doing the level means you're out of the body for as long as it takes to do the level. And some people have taken 3 or 4 weeks to do that level.
What do you do when you do the level? I don't understand.
Well, I haven't done the level, so I can't tell you. I haven't even been trained to audit anyone to do that level.
Has anybody explained what it is?
Well, yes. I went to the briefing that they had by OT8 completions. There was one there, one beautiful girl I fell in love with. Her name is Ivy Turnus. Are you familiar with Ivy Turnus?
No.
Okay. She did the OT8 levels on the ship. She was one of the first graduates, and she came down to Miami to talk to the upper-level Scientologists who were interested in going fully to OT8. And I was at the briefing, and she was just telling me about some of the things that they did. They were able to stop 104 wars on Earth just by postulate. It was at the time when there was this whole thing about the Iran-Contra business, and there was wars. There was the Libya thing. They stopped that. They stopped it all at once, and the next day, everything was fine. It was like everybody went into great ARC with everybody else, and like they diffused a bunch of wars. Like she said, 104 wars.
You mean the wars that we would have had recently?
Yeah. They stopped these wars from happening.
These are wars that were on the verge of breaking out on the planet.
Right, exactly. And some were in progress. And she personally, together with the third dynamic OT8 comps, say that you can't be an OT8 and be working individually. You work on the third dynamic, which is Scientology. These people together diffused the charge on an entire group of N-theta people on this planet.
How do you know that?
I know it. I know it. I have certainty. There's no doubt in my mind.
Tell me a little bit about the dynamics and the importance to mankind of clearing the planet. I mean, tell me about the greatest good for the greatest number of dynamics. Explain all that concept for me.
When a person knows that they are a spiritual being and that they are an immortal being, they are no longer going to be giving consideration to current lifetime to the degree that they do ordinarily. For example, you're an attorney, you're a psychologist. I hate that word, but I like you though. But
that's okay. Make you feel better. I'm really not a psychologist. I told you that before.
I know that, but that's true. All right. You know the lock I have on that whole concept. Okay. You live 70, 80 years. You build up a practice. You accomplish things for your clients. But what do you actually have at the end of 80 years? You drop your body and you've lost your identity, your possessions, and your memory. You drop your body, you go to the Between Lives area, and maybe, if you're lucky, you won't wind up in the year 600 as a member of the Zulu tribe of Ethiopia, or whatever. No, the machine will get it.
Hello? Ready?
Yes.
Okay, let me rephrase that last thing I was asking about. Within the Scientology community,
Yes.
there's the concept of the dynamics.
Right. The greatest good for the greatest number of dynamics.
Okay. With that in mind, explain what that means.
That means there are 8 dynamics. And, of course, you know what they are. Mark may not know. The first dynamic is the dynamic to survive or to be as yourself. Second, as a family member, family unit, as a spouse. The third would be the group. Scientology is considered the third dynamic. Fourth is mankind. Fifth is all life forms, which would include the plant and the animal kingdom. Sixth is the entire physical universe. Seventh is spirits, other thetans. And 8, it would be considered the infinite, or God, or the creator dynamic, you can call it that. That would be the 8th dynamic.
Okay. In that scheme, who would you be benefiting by revealing the truth about your being Christ's Father and thereby leading large numbers of people to Scientology?
All 8 dynamics.
How important an act would that have been?
The most important act in my entire 76 trillion years.
how would you balance out the, you know, you've heard the phrase, you can't make an omelet without breaking an egg. How do you balance out the interests of various people when it comes to good for the largest number of dynamics?
Well, obviously, certain people will be very hurt or ARC broken when they get this true data. But the idea is, once they get over this initial secondary, you know what a secondary is, then at that point, they will have freed a lot of charge on their own personal first dynamic track. And they will see that what they have been regarding as true data has been false data. Therefore, what then happens is that they will address the source of the true data. They will know that this e-meter can prove that I am Jesus Christ, Father Malchut. And that being the case, who developed the e-meter? Scientology. This is the source of the truth, but what is the source of the meter? And it all comes down to the first incident on the track.
So even though people might be initially distressed by this revelation,
they might be initially shocked, ARC broken, or totally devastated.
well,
But it is for the greatest good, for the greatest number of dynamics, that they have this data, false data, stripped. Because why should, let me ask you a question. Is it fair in the 12th century, I had an existence in the 12th century. I was a nun. I was a nun in the 12th century. And I thought it was so important to deny myself pleasure that I died from a hemorrhage in going to the bathroom. Because I didn't want, and not going to the bathroom, I didn't want there to be any pleasure in my life, because I was into sacrifice at that time, sacrificing for the church. So I hemorrhaged because I held my bowels in until they erupted, because I was afraid that any little pleasure might be too much of a sin. Now, that type of thinkingness is what I am here to eradicate in clearing the planet. When you clear a planet, you asked me that before, we got interrupted. When you clear a planet, it doesn't mean clearing half the people off the earth. That's an MU. That would be a bad way of looking at clearing, you know. Clearing means to raise one's state of awareness that they are not a physical body, that they are a spiritual being operating one, and that they don't have to operate, at least on the first dynamic, in their body. Clear means cleared on the first dynamic, or able to exteriorize. Now, OT is not clear. OT means you're clear on all 8 dynamics. You're not only surviving on all of these dynamics, but you are being them. You can be the physical universe. You can be all the spirits in all of the parallel universes. You can be God. That's right. When you are clear on all 8 dynamics, you can be, do, and have, and know. Those are the 4 operations of life on all 8 dynamics. You can hear every thought that everyone is thinking right now, all over the planet Earth, all over every universe, and every thought that they have ever thought and ever will think. And you can know every one of those thoughts with complete knowingness. Can you grasp the immensity of that? Now, when you have a half a planet of Earth cleared, the other half is very easy. You know, it's like the old expression that Scientology taught me. It's the second million that's the easiest. You know, the first million is the hardest to make, you know. And once you get to the first million, it's very easy to make the second million. Fred Hare said that. The point is, what I'm trying to make is, once you clear half of the people of Earth, and you get them to a level of awareness that they know that they are a spiritual being, the rest of it, I mean, who do you have left? You have some Buddhists, and they're already half clear, because Buddhism, you know, L. Ron Hubbard was Buddha. L. Ron Hubbard, read the Hymn of Asia, Have you ever read The Hymn of Asia?
No.
The Hymn of Asia is a book that L. Ron Hubbard wrote. In fact, it's right here. I have it right here. In which he tells about his life as Buddha. And what mistakes he made at that time because he didn't go all the way. Buddha talked about the state of clear, but he didn't tell anyone how to do it. That's what Scientology takes up where Buddhism leaves off.
Is that why there are some similarities between Scientology and Buddhism?
Yeah, because L. Ron Hubbard was Buddha. In fact, in many of my literature it says, join the greatest push on the planet Earth since the last 2,500 years. The 2,500 years ago refers to Buddha. In fact, the greatest act of suppression on the Earth in the last 2,500 years was Christ.
Is that why there's a similarity between the Tibetan Book of the Dead, for example, and the Between Lives area?
Yeah, it's because the Vedic hymns, when the Vedic hymns were written by Ron in that lifetime, that data was written down, and of course the Between Lives area is an offshoot of that. The Vedic hymns was written by Ron too.
Can you explain the Between Lives area?
Very, very well.
Tell me about it.
Okay, this is a lot of fun. Okay, you ready for this? Okay, I love talking about the Between Lives area. It's one of my favorite subjects. When you die by dropping your body, whether it's voluntarily, like Ron did, or involuntarily, like most people die from dying, you do a shift in space, and you appear. You don't go cause-distance effect, you go cause-effect. You appear without distance at the Between Lives area station, which is a long gangplank, sort of thing, leading to the gates of Mars. Have you ever heard of that expression before, the gates of Mars?
No.
That's the entranceway to the Between Lives area.
Where is it?
Mars. Mars. The planet Mars. Why do you think visions of hell are red? Did you ever stop to think about that?
No.
Well, that's the reason.
Okay.
You learn that you learn that actually in OT3, by the way. When you get to the Between Lives area, you see people, or specters actually, like ghost-like figures, walking, but they're totally out of ARC with everyone else, because they've been, when you die, you go through this period of great non-confront, where you try to stay with the body until you really know it's dead, and then when you really confront that it's dead, the implant just has you report back. And reporting back is an actual command that you get before you pick up a new body, but I'll explain that later. You go on this line towards the gates of Mars, and you see the typical white light at the end of this tunnel, but there's no real tunnel. It's like a bridge. It's an actual bridge. And on the line, walking, following other people, which you can't really communicate with because you're really everyone's in their own universe, and they really are in total out of ARC with everyone else. You can look over the sides of this bridge without the railing, and you see what looks to the average wog as hell. But that's the wall of fire. You see? Nobody jumps into the wall of fire.
Let's take a break. Okay, so you were describing walking along the gangplank when the phone rang.
Yes, right. And I love
fire.
I love my machine. Yes, you look down and you see the wall of fire. Of course, in my book, I call it the pit of fire. Just because I didn't want to infringe on any trademarks of theirs, but it's the same thing. It's just for your edification. Because the wall of fire is a patented trademark, I think, of Scientology. I didn't want to break the law. Anyway, so you see the wall of fire, and they are visions of hell and fire and brimstone and the devil and whatever this is. And nobody jumps off the bridge into the wall of fire, but in OT3, you have to. You have to confront the wall of fire while that's the point. You see, you have to jump into the wall of fire. Now, what happens when you jump into the wall of fire? Because, of course, I was co-audited on this in Copenhagen. first thing you think you're burning up, you know. But as a spiritual being, as a Thetan, you can't feel pain. As soon as you can confront the visios, the pictures, it all as-is-is.
It what?
It as-is-is.
As-is-is?
As-is-is, which means you make a mental image picture vanish, because you create you create a perfect duplicate, and you make it vanish. You know what I'm talking about.
Certainly.
Okay. So then you go through another level of hell below that. It's the sea of souls, you know. And you feel yourself choking, and you feel the mud going up your nostrils and in your throat, and all of these different things are happening to you, and you feel this weight of gravity like drowning you in mud and quicksand and everything else. And as soon as you confront that, it explodes away and vanishes, you know. And then you have there are other levels below that. There's the ice cube, which is, you know, they're all in the history of man, really. Anyone can really read them and not know what they really are. But in any case, you go through all of these levels, and at the bottom of this thing, you find out, hey, I'm okay. I can confront anything. Because all of these pictures are false pictures. But this is not what happens in the Between Lives area. Now, I digressed to tell you about how to confront OT3. You know.
Where's the Between Lives area?
Okay, let's do the Between Lives area first. So you finally get to the gates of Mars, and
you're on the gangplank.
You're on the gangplank, and it takes the whole process takes 69 days.
69 days?
Of Earth time. You know, and it's the first day you spend on the gangplank, or the first 3 days, I forget exactly what it is. I have the data somewhere. But then you get into you go through the Between Lives area and pass through the gates of Mars. And the first thing that happens is that you get a compulsion or an implant or a hypnotic suggestion in WOG language to mock up how you died, or to recreate a picture of your death. But the problem with it is, it's not really how you died. You mock up a false death. In other words, if you died from a heart attack, you might get the compulsion to recreate a picture of you dressed something entirely different in a different time period, different space location, being hit by a truck. So automatically what's happening is that you're totally confused. The purpose of the Between Lives area, I should say, first of all, is to wipe out your memory, so that when you come back, you don't remember anything. After you go through this rigorous procedure of mocking up a false death, then you're given something called the year zero. The year zero, right away, if you ever see the year zero after you drop your body, you'll know it's a fake implant, because there is no year zero. But what occurs is that you have to recreate your entire time track from the beginning of time by creating pictures. The first phase, I should say, is when they give you pictures of your false death. They give the pictures to you.
Who's they?
The suppressives that run the Between Lives area on automatic. It actually runs on automatic.
Who does that, though?
Well, in the upper levels, you realize that it was set up by Christ in one of his first lifetimes. But you don't get this data, really. You're not supposed to get this data until OT5. I have an in, so I got the data. You know.
What's the in?
Well, anyway, when I was in Denmark, I pulled a few strings, and they thought I was at a higher level than I really was. So I got some confidential data, and I wrote that up later on, and I got into a lot of trouble for that, too. But anyway, the point is, you learn in the second wall of fire that it was Jesus Christ who built the Between Lives area, and that was his overt. Did you know that?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Anyway, what occurs is this. The first phase, you are given pictures of a false death. You don't mock them up yourself. I think I might have said that, but in retrospect, you are given the pictures. The second phase is the year zero, when you have to create pictures of your entire time track from, quote, the year zero. Except what you're doing is you're creating a lot of mock-ups and a lot of, very much like a dream. like very much the way you dream. When you dream things, you create things out of sequence, and sometimes you wake up scared because you're the total effect of the dream. And he's falling asleep. That's too many MUs, you see. Doping off again. Anyway, during the second phase of the Between Lives area, when you recreate all of these moments of past track, they're not really right either, because interspersed with the creation of the past track are also other implants and suggestions which make the data false. Okay? Then the third phase of the Between Lives area is something called This Is Your Life.
Oh, with Ralph Edwards?
Wait. It's a story that they give you again of your next life on Earth. Except it's also a false story. And it's also with wrong pictures and wrong dates and wrong visios. And it's taken from the random aggregate of the total amount of time track available as mental image picture storage in the entire universe. And you're getting all kinds of random sequences of your next life which have nothing whatsoever to do with your next life, because your next life is dependent upon your entry point or your anchor point into the physical universe by virtue of this very suppressive sequence, which is the fourth cycle, which is called the human race. And the human race is you as a Thetan vigorously pushing and shoving and fighting and clawing a bunch of other Thetans to pick up a zygote, which is a fertilized egg and a sperm at the moment of conception. Now, when you do this, you have already done a time shift and a space shift. So you're not necessarily back in 1989 or 88. You could be in the year 1200 or the year 3000. That's how I got into the year 22 BC in my last lifetime when I was Jesus' father. Because when I came back after the lifetime, after the previous lifetime, I came back not sequentially in time or chronologically in time, but I came back at the year 22 BC, and I was the son of Amiohai the cantor in Nazareth, you know, and there I was. But this getting back to the Between Lives area again, here you are totally wiped out with your memory from the 3 sessions that you've had in the Between Lives area on Mars, and you come back and you have to fight all these people. You get this beautiful sound of a baby crying. You get all of these suggestions. You also get a false dear soul's picture of Jesus, which most people get. They see this picture of Jesus, and when they come back to life, they think he's a nice guy. He was really the biggest suppressive that ever lived. And the fact is that when you're fighting all these other Thetans to pick up the zygote, you have to be a real bastard, a real son of a bitch, because you have to literally knock them out of the way dead to get to that fertilized egg. And what could happen? You could go through 11 attempted abortions by the time you get reborn, and go through the Between Lives area after each one. Let's say you pick up a zygote and the mother aborts the fetus. That means you got to go square one back to the gates of Mars on the bridge and go through another 69 days of bullshit. And then pick up another. You have to keep fighting until you get to that baby, and that baby actually survives to birth.
See, when you said a minute ago that Jesus was the biggest suppressive who ever lived, but doesn't suppressive actually mean someone who's doing something that's contrary to the organization called Scientology?
That's one definition. The other definition is a suppressive is anyone who suppresses you as a Thetan. Okay? There's a multiple definition of it. I don't even have to look it up. I can tell you right away. It suppresses you as a Thetan. How did Jesus Christ suppress us as Thetans? He created the Between Lives area.
Didn't you once say to me something about psychologists having something to do with Between Lives area?
No.
Maybe I misunderstood.
Well, what's the Scientology attitude towards psychologists?
Well, obviously, I'll tell you right away. Let's supposing a person has a problem with their wearing a necktie or a problem with drinking milk. What the hell can psychiatry or psychology ever find out about my past lives to correct this problem? They'll look at environment, they'll look at genetic blueprint, they'll look at all kinds of unimportant present lifetime garbage factors, but they're not going to find out that I was hung in the square of Malaga, and they're not going to find out that my ex-wife 8 lifetimes ago in Tahiti poisoned me with milk. And therefore psychiatry and psychology is a false science that does not work, that actually traps the Thetan into thinking also falsely that things that they can actually heal or cure or proof up a body, and they can't. In fact, they actually cave people in. Seriously.
Have you ever taken any formal position against psychologists? Did you ever participate in any?
Oh yes.
Anything?
I was one of the delegates to the Psych Bust.
What was that?
To the at Flag, we had a major rally in April of '87, and there were delegates from every org on the planet at this place, and I was one of the delegates from the Fort Lauderdale mission at the time. They had some. I was at that time still connected with Fred Hare at the mission before I was routed to the org when Fred Hare's work was done. Actually, Hare's work shouldn't have been done, because if he had stayed on, nothing like this would have happened. I personally think that it was the org that screwed things up and made some mistakes. There's a lot of people there that are, well, like Umberto, the one who cut my arm with a scissor and chopped off a half an inch out of my flesh. Those kind of people are really pretty theta people, but the mission people were nice.
But anyway, back to the Psych Bust.
Okay, the Psych Bust took place in April, I think it was April 9th of '87. We went to Flag, and we were given a big briefing on
where?
Flag, the Flag land base in Clearwater, Florida, 210 South Harrison Avenue at the Fort Harrison Hotel. And in the ballroom of on the 10th floor of Flag, we were given a private briefing by some of the execs of CCHR. Dennis Clark is the head of CCHR. You may know of him. He was the one who found that Jolly Llewellyn West gave an elephant LSD, you know. Another one that was there was Freddie Ulan, U-L-A-N. And the two of them gave a great briefing on how we were going to eliminate psychiatry in the world, and what we had to do as individual Thetans in order to do that. One of the plans to eliminate psychiatry initially in this country is to see to it that psychology and psychiatry can no longer bill insurance companies for their therapy. That'll cut their financial lines right away, you know. And there's a big push going on now with CCHR to introduce certain legislative measures in Washington to eliminate psychology and psychiatry procedure codes.
What does CCHR stand for?
Citizens Commission for Human Rights. They're the only organization in the world today that exposes the dangers of psychiatry, and I have quite a lot of literature from them. Freedom magazine is always full of it, full of that literature, and I also have a lot of the briefing notes from that time. I have them here. And of course, we went through some of the things such as electric shock therapy. They brought in that electric shock machine made by a company ironically called Somatics Inc. That's the name of the manufacturer of the ECT machine, you know, if you know. And how drug therapy is being administered to the school children, how Ritalin is rampant, and that the kids are buying and selling it because it's actually a controlled substance, you know. The problem with drugs is that it prevents the body from exteriorizing on one hand, and certain drugs, like LSD, do an involuntary exteriorization of the Thetan from the body. Recently I read that some forms of crack were also responsible for involuntary exteriorizations. So there's like a duality here of the inhibitors that prevent, certain drugs inhibit the body, the Thetan from leaving the body, and certain other drugs force the Thetan out of the body. But it's all bad because you're the effect of these drugs.
We're talking about drugs. Haven't you also had an opinion about caffeine? Well,
caffeine causes AIDS. Well, not causes AIDS, it's the catalyst for AIDS. I personally have some knowledge of this because when I was in Auschwitz, at that time Dr. Joseph Mengele was working on biological and germ warfare. And he developed a virus, which at that time nobody knew what it was called, which would create a imbalance in the immune system, which later on I found out through Scientology was the AIDS virus. It was
Mengele was one who developed AIDS?
He was the creator of the AIDS virus. And he did it while I was in the concentration camp.
So what does caffeine have to do with it?
Caffeine is the catalyst by which a person who has exposure to the virus comes down with the full-blown AIDS disease. The fact of the matter is, if you have the virus and you don't have caffeine, you can't get the disease. That's true. After the war, when they did experiments, after World War II, when experiments were done by I.G. Farben in Africa with a lot of the natives, and in Argentina, another company did some in Argentina under Mengele. He was continuing these experiments. They were done on two fronts. It was like they were playing the birthday game too, but in a negative way. They actually showed how in control groups, those people that took caffeine in their systems got the disease, while the ones that were never given caffeine but were given the HIV-3 virus never came down with it and were healthy.
How would you find this out?
Well, my case involved, my auditing involved the Mengele business.
So in other words, everything...
I was also party to a lot of briefing, which I was CS for certain briefings on AIDS because of the fact that my time track had a parallel intersection of that area.
You're saying that some of this you learned then on the meter?
Oh yeah, and the rest of it I got in briefings at the org. They had a special briefing. I think it was in January of this year at the Miami org.
Okay, now back to the psych bust. What was the psych bust? You told us about how you were going to rid the planet of psychiatry.
Well, we were also supposed to do certain things to discredit various suppressive psychiatrists. Writing letters. I had to write a letter, for example, to President Cossiga of Italy about a psychiatrist in Italy who was actually trying to drive the Church of Scientology out of Milan. And my project was to discredit the psychiatrist by making up some stories about some homosexual affair he had, you know, which was easy for me to do because I was the one, I was assigned to this because of my own case. Don't forget, I was the one who convinced Judas Iscariot to betray Christ. Judas Iscariot and Jesus Christ were homosexual lovers. You know that. And I convinced Judas that Christ was having an imaginary affair with another guy, when in fact he wasn't. He was really faithful to Judas. And Judas, in his rage, betrayed him. It had nothing to do with money. It had to do with the fact that he was very much in love with Christ. And that's how Judas betrayed him, because I talked him into it. So it was very easy for me to write the letter to the president of Italy, or prime minister, I forget what he was. Cossiga was his name, indicating the psychiatrist had had a homosexual affair with a nephew of mine, you know. And it was all mocked up. It was a mock-up process. But it was necessary because if enough people did this, it would discredit the lines of this psychiatrist who was destroying the church in Italy, in Milan.
Was this another example of the greatest good for the greatest number?
Absolutely. Because who the hell gives a damn about this psychiatrist if the whole city of Milan was at risk of not being cleared? You follow?
You think you did anything wrong there?
No way. I would do it again. The psychiatrist was an SP.
What's an SP?
Suppressive. You have no idea how much this psychiatrist did on the whole track. I read the briefing. I mean, this guy was something else. He was one of the people on Exolia who bred us for a planet, who bred us for food so that the higher intelligences could eat. We're doing the same thing right now with veal on this planet. We're no better. But the fact is, these were actual thetans in bodies being bred until they were 15 years old as food on Exolia, so that the higher intelligences who knew more, who had better knowingness, could eat. They ate the people. And this damn psychiatrist from Milan was the one who did that. And he deserved it.
What sort of a briefing was it where you were told about this?
Oh, the briefing was it was an intensive briefing at the org.
So
They came down, the technical team from FLAG came down, and there was very few people in the briefing. It was I had to be there. Actually, they were briefed individually. There were appointments made with individual Scientologists in order to brief them on what they individually had to do to help the third dynamic. And my briefing session involved understanding the why, the hidden why about this psych suppressive, and exactly why it was important for me to do it, because my hat was the way I got Jesus out of the way in the last lifetime. I had to do the same thing basically without getting personally involved in the
How
issue.
would people know that that was part of your whole track?
What do you mean?
That you had this particular skill, that you had gotten rid of Jesus in that way?
Because it was part of my OWs.
What do you mean by OW?
I wrote them up as overt withholds.
What is an OW?
An overt withhold is a confessional write-up. It's like a KR, a knowledge report, that you write up to ethics, to HCO, and to your auditor. There's like 4 copies of a OW, you know.
So every time you discovered something?
Every time you either commit a crime against Scientology, or you've discovered something you've done to hurt the greatest good for the greatest number of dynamics, basically that's the reason for any OW.
And what would happen to these OWs? Would they become part of some file?
It would be part of CF, Central Files.
What about part of your case? Would it become part of your case file?
Oh yeah, yeah. I would go. My case file was always being reviewed. You don't know how many times the case file was missing because it had to go to INT.
Yeah.
So International Management, which was the highest management. That's like WDC INT, actually, particularly. WDC INT is the watchdog committee for international management, and my file was always being sent up there because I was basically a pretty hot property, you know, because of who I was in respect to Christ Father, because of the fact that I was an FP, which is a specialized financial planner doing certain work for the orgs, and because of the fact that I was wearing quite a few different strategic hats, which came under the purview of the GO and then later of the OSA. Plus the fact that very few people have been briefed by the top-level execs at FLAG about a major project. Do you know anyone else who could possibly have cleared half the planet and who will with this book? Do you know anybody else who's going to clear half of Earth? No. No. But this book's going to do it, with or without Scientology. The greatest good for the greatest number of dynamics right now, believe it or not. Believe it or not, the greatest good is, even if Scientology declares me to be an SP, I'm still going to wear my hat. And I'm still going to be a Scientologist, and Ron is going to be proud of me. Because no matter what happens with some of the flubs that occurred and some of the things that I did in not following my ethics handling correctly, and I admit them, I write up my own OWs now, you know.
With that in mind, keeping in mind the importance of what you're doing, let's just think of that and hold it aside for a second. And if you would tell us about the various contacts that Scientology has had with you after your arrest and what it is that you've been instructed to do. Can you tell me that story for a few minutes?
Yes. I've been instructed to do an EOC, which is an end of cycle.
Meaning?
Kill myself. Suicide.
When were you first instructed to do that? Well, tell us what happened after you were arrested and then released on bail.
Okay. Well, there's the notes right there.
But just tell us about it now.
Why do you have these notes?
For you.
Okay, I asked you to do this, right?
Yes, you did. After when I was arrested, I tried to call Ray Jordan from the jail, and he wouldn't accept the call. Well, basically, in a nutshell, without going through the 12 pages of notes there, INT management now feels, their position right now is that I could cause Scientology a greater embarrassment than I could possibly do good for them. I disagree with that position. They feel that right now, because I've been arrested and because there's a flap about this class action lawsuits, that I could cause them the greatest harm rather than the greatest good.
Is this what you were told?
Yeah, I was told that by Humberto Fontana, the DSA Miami. No management execs have contacted me since this arrest.
Do you recall where you were?
When I was arrested?
No, where you were when the last interruption happened.
No.
Where you were in this we were talking about.
No. Do you know, Barry?
No. Okay, I think you...
You're talking about Ray Jordan, your conversation
Right.
with Ray Jordan.
Okay. So I tried to call Ray Jordan initially, and he refused to accept my call. And after I was arrested, there were various calls from different people. Mark Witt's call was probably the most upsetting because he didn't leave many alternatives as a handling for this situation. See, I felt that when I was arrested, that management would send their attorneys immediately to help me, you know, because I really, when I came out of the airport and I was arrested by Bill Kemp, and first the customs agents grabbed me. And I said, are you sure it's me you're looking for? I couldn't believe it. It was like, why? You know, what, do you know my name? I kept on asking, do you know my name? And they said, yes, we do. I said, what is my name? And I couldn't believe that they were arresting me. I couldn't understand why. And the first thing that went through my mind is maybe they knew about the driver's license that Frank Thompson let me use, which was for Robert Walker, the one they made up at the ethics office. I said, but why would they be arresting me for that? I said, maybe it's illegal to have another driver's license. And it wasn't until Kemp gave me the complaint in the office at the airport that it hit me what was going on. And even so, I didn't understand what the complaint was for, or what was it for, because it said Larkspur, California, and I didn't know. I said I was never there. I didn't even know where Larkspur was. And of course, he wanted to ask me questions, but I didn't have an attorney, and my father was there, and he told me not to answer any questions unless I had an attorney, so I didn't say anything. But on the way to MCC, where he took me, I was trying to explain to him that it was important that we met because he could do something about the AIDS virus. I was trying to explain to him about the caffeine. Remember the other day he mentioned that he had communicated the information to the other agents. But I said to him, that's the real main reason why we met, because you don't have this data. And it's vital that you do, because people are dying. And I explained it to him, you know. But
so what about Ray Jordan?
Yeah, let's keep this principally to the story that begins with the first suggestion that you do an end of cycle. Those are the parts of it, and everything that follows from that is what I'm principally interested in this question.
Well, I asked what was going to be done now about my mission, my purpose, my goals, and I was told that it would have to be put on hold, and that it couldn't be done. And I said, what do you mean it couldn't be done? How can you not clear half a planet? You know. Anyway, two people in the Miami org explained it to me. First was Mark Witt. When it really came down to it, he told me that what they would do for me in doing an end of cycle, there'd be a fair exchange, and they would guarantee me safe passage through the Between Lives area, where I could come back in a Scientology Sea Org family and have my full bridge paid for, which is what I was trying to do now. And there would be no doubt that I could go to full OT8 or whatever the level was. But I had some other data, and I questioned it. The data was the fact that when you return, you could do a shift in time, and I could wind up in the year 1200. What guarantee could there be that I would come back in a Sea Org family right now in this time period? And it's sort of, I detected a little bit of, like, over the phone, you know, in your TRs, you drill on knowing the person's reaction. And I detected a little bit of like Q&A and back off with Mark Witt, that he didn't really have an answer, but he came up with an answer. But I didn't really know if it was the real answer. But it might be. He said that regardless of the way the Between Lives area works, we have tech to bypass it, to get you through it and deliver what we promise. So it sounded like a good idea.
Did he explain to you what that tech was?
He said it's upper level tech.
Alright guys, I'm going to go ahead and end the stream. I think it's been like 2 hours now. If you're going, oh, you didn't finish the interview. Well, all you got to do is Google Stephen Fishman Scientology deposition and you can find it. So, thank you guys for hanging out with me here. I think we've got a viable build here. And be looking for the build video. I'll reveal everything about it and what you need and stuff like that. So I'm enjoying having you guys here while I'm doing my build stuff, and I appreciate you hanging out with me. So you guys have a fantastic day and a good night.